this year, which went very well. So we're very pleased to share that with you today. We'll give you some background info and then just talk to you about what we did and how it went.
Hello.
Yeah, you're right.
Hello, my name is Sonia Joshua. I live in Ngukurr community. Ngukurr is a small remote community, and then about 1,000 people lives in Ngukurr, and we all speak Kriol. Kriol is our first language. English is our second language.
So a bit about Kriol as well. It's spoken here in Ngukurr, but also across a large part of Northern Australia, which you can see the shaded area on the small map. There's about 20,000 people who speak Kriol altogether, but there are different dialects similar to English, having Australian English and American English. Kriol is a bit similar. In some places it's well accepted, in other places it is looked down upon by speakers as well. It's usually just something that is spoken socially. It doesn't really feature in formal education in a systematic way. So in Ngukurr, it is well accepted, but up until recently, it hasn't really featured in the school formally or in other formal domains.
So at Ngukurr School, we have 11 classes from preschool to year 12. There's over 250 students and 98% of those students are Indigenous. Each class has a classroom teacher and a local Indigenous assistant teacher. And as Greg said, the vast majority of classes across the school are delivered in English. And some aspects of the job can be quite challenging. I find as a non-Indigenous person, there are times when it's hard for me to communicate with students. The students also have irregular attendance and there's behaviour issues and high staff turnover. But despite all of that, it's a really rewarding job and I feel privileged to be able to work here.
So while Sonia and Heather work for Ngukurr School, I work for a program called Meigim, Kriol, Strongbala, and I'm funded through a local Aboriginal organisation, which our program was started in the middle of last year, and our focus is on Kriol education and developing resources for Kriol. So not funded through Education Department, but the community saw a need for this to be part of the school and the community's work. So just over in the past year, it's just developed into that now our program works with almost every class in Ngukurr School to deliver a weekly program in Kriol, which is included in the Northern Territory curriculum. They have a curriculum for first languages maintenance. So our program helps to deliver that part of the curriculum for Ngukurr School.
So I'm Heather. This is my second year working in an early years class. Before that, I worked in a special ed primary class, and I'm nearly at the end of my third year in Ngukurr, and I'm also completing my Masters in Indigenous Education.
The one person who isn't with us today is Robertson, who is my co-worker for the Meigim, Kriol, Strongbala program. So she's local here to Ngukurr and a first language Kriol speaker. We've worked together for the past year and a half on the Meigim, Kriol, Strongbala program, and I've worked in the community and with Kriol on and off for the past 16 years. And
I'm Sonia Joshua. I'm assistant teacher. I work with year 1, 2, and 3 in Ngukurr School. I did work here 7 years, and I speak Kriol. And I was born at Ngukurr.
So at Ngukurr, we use the Australian curriculum to determine what we teach. We teach across all of the primary school subjects. And in my class, I found that health and wellbeing is one of the priority areas. The strategies that we teach across this curriculum help students learn across all of the learning areas. And for this particular unit, we looked at the 2 content descriptors of being healthy, safe and active, and communicating and interacting for health and wellbeing. And then in line with these, I implemented the Zones of Regulation curriculum as a trial to help all of my students learn about their feelings, and also to cater for students in my class with behavioural issues. The Zones of Regulation curriculum is designed to foster self-regulation and emotional control. It gets students to sort feelings into 4 coloured zones and teaches students strategies to help them stay in the green zone. We initially delivered the unit as an English-only unit. However, I found that this made me encounter some challenges. Students were using Kriol words that I didn't understand to describe their feelings. When students were upset and angry, I found that they reverted to Kriol, and it made it difficult for me to be able to help them with what they needed. And that's where Greg came in.
Yeah, so with the support from our program, I mean, really, our interest is working with the school and trying to look at the benefits that mother tongue education can bring, trying to, which can assist with things like engagement of students, wellbeing, attendance. It's a community development program, so we're providing employment, and it just brings the community into the school that little bit more. For the curriculum, it allows students to be able to engage with the first language maintenance part of the NT curriculum. And the community, the graph you can see on the side there is a survey from a couple of years ago, which was a community survey asking residents about what they think the role of Kriol should be. And you can see that most respondents thought it was important for children to be able to learn to read and write Kriol, and that, well, the question there is, should Ngukurr School be bilingual? But we take that to mean that they think, residents think that languages other than English should be included in the curriculum, and there was a strong response to yes, that should be the case. So that's where our program came in to assist the classroom teachers in the school. So how we developed this unit is, as Heather said, we had the English Zones of Regulation curriculum as a starting point, which has set key words. So the way it started is Heather sort of came to me with the list of words that you'd tried using, or in English, obviously. And instead of just directly translating them, we had more sort of thought a bit more freely and adapted the whole system into Kriol. And then we worked together to develop lessons, and then we delivered them as a team. Just to give you an idea of the words that Heather brought to us as part of the Zones of Regulation. Happy, sad, just right, which is when you're in the green zone. So you can see the marker where students are supposed to be able to identify what zone they're in. Proud, tired, hungry, sick, angry, silly. They'll steer kids towards identifying what sort of their state, emotional state or wellbeing state is at that point in time. When we receive these words to look at adapting them into Kriol, some of those words do translate into Kriol, but not always. And there's also things that we could bring into this that are distinctively Kriol and local. So Carol, who's not here, we worked together to come up with a set of 9 words in Kriol that were the focus of the unit we delivered. The first 2 there, good bingy and no good bingy, very closely related to happy and sad, but they use this word bingy, which means stomach. So the literal translation is to be good belly, I suppose, but it just means happy and sad. We did strong one and weak one as antonyms of strong and weak. We did these shame, jingly bala. So jingly bala means proud, and shame, it's from ashamed in English, but it has a slightly different meaning in Kriol. We looked at being kind, this word wanglawan, which I'll discuss in a minute, and wilewan, which means angry. So you can just see from those terms some of them correspond well to English, some of them aren't derived from English, some of them are derived from English, but they have their own adaptations in Kriol. So it was just important to know that this system here, it's based on English largely, but it is its own system. So using Kriol allowed us freedom to interpret. We used terms that some related directly to English. Some were rooted in English, but they weren't present in the original English set. Some of the terms aren't from English. And we did this deliberately. We wanted to use some terms that don't come from English because then it gets students to think about that this way of talking about emotions is something that doesn't come from outside, that it's a system internal to their own ways of being in their own local culture. And then sort of implicitly start to bring ideas that they can create greater awareness and pride in the language that they do speak at home. So what we did, came up with the terms, organised some lessons, thanks to these guys who are experts in lesson planning rather than me. And we delivered 6 lessons over 6 weeks. Roughly each lesson we had mat talk discussion where the kids are just question and answer and talking about some of those key terms. We would engage them with things like songs. We translated "If You're Happy and You Know It" into Kriol. Yeah. Role playing and a physicalization of the emotions. We did a game, Emotion Statues, where they had to actually physicalize what some of these emotion terms look like. Incorporated some literacy, copying words or recognizing the letters in some of the words that we were doing. And then often we did drawing where they had to depict the emotion and then oral storytelling about what they have depicted and talk to us about what they've drawn and why. So the mat talk, that was really interesting. At the start, my feeling was that the students hadn't done sort of formal mat talk in their first language much before, where it was a teacher doing it like a proper teacher lesson, but it's actually in Kriol. So we noticed after a few weeks, some kids got it straight away, but some kids, it took a few weeks, oh, we can just do this part of the lesson in Kriol, and we don't have to think about what to say in English, we can just do this in Kriol. So halfway through the program, when we looked at this word Wanguluwan, that's when we started to get really good discussion coming up. So the quick translation of Wanguluwan is orphan, but it has much more complex meanings than the kids themselves actually came up with great explanations of what this word Wanguluwan means. So the things they came up with was you don't have a car, you don't have a house, you have dogs, that's your only company rather than family, no bike, no family, that you silip la bush, so sleeping rough. And then my favorite expression was the one kid who used this Kriol term, same clothes one, which is quite a creative way of creating an adjective that means to be wearing the same clothes. So that was a really nice term that one of the kids themselves came up with through this mat talk. Do you want to talk about this or do you want me to keep going? Okay, so I'm doing a lot of talking, but this is just, I'll give you some more examples. So we've got kids, we'd cover a term, we'd discuss it, and then we'd encourage them to draw pictures about the terms and be able to then talk to us about what they've drawn. So this is from the start of the program, week 1, and this is a student who is not one of your strongest students, is that right? And I remember these guys being really impressed with the work he did because he did a drawing, he copied the term me good bingy, which means I'm happy, and he did quite a detailed drawing for his level and was able to talk to us about what he'd drawn. Do you want to say?
It was quite a few months after Christmas, and that wasn't one of the suggestions that anyone had thought about on the mat. No one had said, oh yeah, when it's Christmas I feel good bingy. So he had thought of that by himself and then gone to the table and drawn that.
And then just the other example I've got here is from one of the strongest students, and this is sort of towards the end of the program, week 5. And by this stage, we'd covered all the key terms and we'd given students then free choice. Okay, which emotion term or which term do you want to draw a picture for? So then they're at the point where they're choosing themselves which one to pick to draw. And then they had to know how to copy the word correctly from the board. So this one student chose the term Ngukurr, which translates as proud. And you can see very proudly, she put a lot of detail into her drawing, and she spent, it was like school had finished, she's still there 5 minutes after school wanting to finish her drawing to make it perfect. So that was just another indication that there was some really good responses to the lessons. So we'll just finish off with, I guess, our final reflections.
So I found the unit was really, really good. It gave the non-Indigenous students in my class the opportunity to learn, to be exposed to a second language, and they learned some keywords and phrases in Kriol. And sometimes when they're describing how they're feeling, they will use the Kriol term rather than the English one. And then for the Indigenous students in my class, it was their first opportunity to learn in their first language. And as Greg said with the map talk, it was such a foreign experience for them in that first week, and you could see their confidence growing, and they got really engaged as the program went on. It was really good to see their improvement and progress over the unit. They all really enjoyed the lesson. They couldn't wait for when's Greg and Carol coming. So that was really nice. They all participated. The effort grew during the unit. Students who were reluctant to speak and write in English were much more confident in reading and writing and speaking in Kriol, and that transferred into other learning areas as well. And I was able to communicate better with the students, and it also increased our attendance because students were wanting to come to the Kriol lessons. So as you can tell, it was really, really successful. Yeah.
Wanda, what did you think?
Had been I think it has improved kids understand their feelings, in Kriol. They express their feelings, and I saw them drawing pictures about how they feel. Kids can only express their feeling, how they feel when they draw a picture, act through their action and ways. That's how we can tell kids express their feelings towards teachers, or towards other staff in the school. Sometimes they don't understand about feelings in English, but when Craig did help us with this feeling, in translating feelings in Kriol for well-being, it's improved. I've seen this for an improvement with kids. They understand about their feelings.
And what about you? What did you think after the?
Me?
Yeah.
I feel proud about seeing my kids sharing their feelings in Kriol.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, and I've already mentioned, from my perspective, not working for Ngukurr School, this is sort of something that I've been interested in seeing how it could work in the classroom, and I was so pleased with how it did turn out. For me personally, a lot of that credit goes to Heather and Sonia, because they are excellent educators and really dedicated and care a lot about their students, and you can see the students respond really well to that. So part of the reason it's so successful is definitely because of the strong teachers that their students have. But I did notice, I was really impressed with sort of the way they engaged, and like I said before, the development in their ability to sit down and talk about stuff in Kriol, draw the picture, come back and share what they've done in their picture with us. And you can see the development, and I don't know, I hope it also contributed to better behaviour in the classroom, which is always
Yes.
a challenge. This community, there's a lot of social issues and, a lot of issues that students bring into the classroom. So this wasn't a magic fix. It doesn't automatically fix all the issues, but hopefully it does assist in some way. So yeah, the conclusion is that we believe this unit went well. It allowed students to engage better with the content by delivering it in first language, and then, but also that flowed on to other areas of their education, gives students tools to discuss their emotions and regulate their behaviour. Hopefully it gave you guys tools as well to work with the students in understanding how they're feeling as well. And for us, for me, it was really rewarding too. It's an example of delivering formal education using Kriol, which even though the language has 20,000 speakers, it just doesn't feature in sort of education system and units in this sort of structured, coordinated way. So it was really great to be able to test that out, and that it actually met its goals as far as we're concerned. So thank you very much for listening to us. And if you have questions, send them through.
Good. Thank you. You can stop sharing the screen, I think, if you like. We have questions on the chat box already. Let me see. Okay. The first, perhaps you just say it orally, I think. Is that Nora or Kweshing Song? How would you pronounce that name? Okay.
Do you want me to read, or do they want to ask us?
Yes. You can have
hello.
Okay, you are. No, okay.
This question here. Okay. So thank you very much, Greg, and everyone. Thank you. It's very useful. And Kevin, okay, sorry. So we are just because it's quite useful to get the terms in Kriol instead of translating them from the English. We are just wondering how the Kriol terms are grouped into the zones of regulation. That's the first question.
Yeah, so with the zones, we've created a engine, and then so it's got the red zone, green zone, blue zone, and yellow zone. And then inside there, we've got a big display of how you feel in each of those zones. And now we've also got it in Kriol with the pictures of how people are feeling with Kriol underneath it and English. And then the kids will, if we say, what zone are you in, they'll tell us, and then they'll say in Kriol or English why they're in that zone.
Okay, that's very interesting. And are the zones culturally based to English speakers?
Other zones culturally biased to English speakers?
I would probably say they are, because some of the terms out here, like strong and weak one, they aren't really related into those zones. So doing the Kriol program, we were able to make it more relevant for them.
Sorry, what I mean is that are the Kriol words put into zones and the zones are expected to be in English understanding, like the meaning of the zones in English. Do you know what I'm saying? So the zones have an original English meaning.
Yeah.
And you have them in Kriol meaning. So when you put them into those zones, you already have an expectation that they go into these zones which already have the English meaning already in there.
So I guess we've kept the zones, the 4 zones, as that's the basis for the framework, but we've just been able to use these Kriol terms and concepts, which may or may not correspond to English, but we can spread those terms and concepts across those same 4 zones. So I guess while we've kept the zones, we didn't do tired, we didn't do hungry, because that sort of Kriol term, weak one, that can encompass both. So weak one might go into one of those zones, but it might represent both tired and hungry. So we've kept the zones, but this Kriol system is kind of independent of the English.
Right, so you've adapted the zones to fit the Kriol terms, basically.
Yeah.
So it's not forcing them into zones that were originally have English meaning.
No, I think the zones are fairly translatable, because you're either in the right zone where you're in the right headspace and emotional state to be able to focus, or you're in the sort of hyper, what's the red zone?
The red zone is when you're angry or really upset.
So sort of a hyperactivity or hyper emotional state where you can't. So that red zone, it's always a red zone no matter what language you're dealing with. It's just a state of well-being that does translate across languages and cultures, I suppose.
Okay, sure. And also the third, that's very good. Also the third question is that the expectations of being in certain zones are already biased. So for Indigenous people, maybe culturally to have, for certain zones maybe more acceptable than other ones. So let me repeat again. So in the classroom setting, or say in English-speaking Australia, so certain zones are more acceptable. Indigenous cultures, I'm just supposing, there's other zones that are more acceptable as well. So you're sort of forcing them to be in this sort of classroom setting, having these expectations of certain zones.
Yeah, so I guess it's a bigger picture question of like, with Aboriginal students, do we have that same expectation that they're supposed to be in this zone, or that's a bigger question, I guess.
Yeah, and there's not you're in the wrong zone, that's not the right zone. It's about accepting that that's how you're feeling at this time. How can we help you?
I guess that's sort of imposing that on the children, sort of expecting them to behave a certain way, whereas maybe out in the community with culture, they might be in different zones that are acceptable to their own community.
Yeah, it could be, but I guess, then that's a bigger question of like, are we ready to deconstruct or decolonize the entire education system? We're not quite at that stage yet.
Okay.
But I guess we're working within the system still,
right,
but interpreting it in a way that is going to make it more relevant and more engaging for the kids that are stuck in that system, it's unavoidable.
Well, it's good that you're aware of that. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, you are doing a brilliant job, brilliant work. We are very admired. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, Susie has a question.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed listening to that. I was just wondering, in your, throughout the unit, it seems obvious that you went well beyond the sort of simple expression of the zones as they originally were into elaborations, and the drawings were particularly detailed. And I wondered if you felt that you're going to need to sort of repeat this to keep the zone diagram working. So, or is the zone diagram getting a culture of its own so that you don't feel like you're going to have to do this process again and again for the kids that join?
I guess, have they carried on using it in the same way, or is it diminished over time?
No, we're still, so this was in term 1 and we're in term 4 now, and they're still using it the same way because we use it regularly throughout every day.
And I'm wondering if anyone new comes in and kind of catches the idea without having been there from your, careful working through the zones through Kriol. Do they sort of catch on in a way?
You mean students or school teachers?
Oh, both, really. Students I was thinking of, but...
Yeah, so it's very transient. So we get students throughout the year that come in, and they've all been able to join in with the zones without that specific teaching. But the rest of the class has had that knowledge, so they're able to pass that on to the other students. So at eating time, when they're putting their zone in, if someone's new, the person sitting next to them will explain it in Kriol and ask them, how do you feel? And we'll explain it. So they're doing some peer teaching as well. And then Sonia's in the class all the time, so she'll work with any new students and help them.
And then I guess the next question, part of that is, well, next year, so the Australian curriculum has health and wellbeing to be taught each year, each year, each
Yeah.
term, each year.
Each year, every year.
So, you know, we'll look at developing it into sort of a stage 2 of what we've started this year, I guess, for next year, and take it even further, I suppose.
Right.
So we're going to get through this year first.
Okay,
you.
I think we have to stop here because we are running out of time. So thank you, Greg and his team, you know, for the interesting presentation, reporting interesting project. Okay, so thank you again. We